So I recently shot a beard oil ad for a local company back home in Ottawa, and it was something that was very quick, very like no budget basically, and I wanted to get it done. And the idea was to have natural lighting because you're a natural man, you're a lumberjack, you're in the wilderness. So, and also it's really tough to wrestle with the sunlight when you're out in the middle of the field in the dead of winter, and it's the field is a giant bounce coming from underneath. And when you're trying to fight the sun, you're going to lose. So in this video, we're going to talk about how you could befriend the sun and use it in your benefit. Let's get to it. Here we go, wide shot. Man with something on his shoulder. It's an axe walking through the dead of winter up to a farm and some logs, some farming equipment, golden hour. Sexy, breaking wood, that's a man. Yeah. Your husband that you married that does finance, that's not a man. He couldn't chop you wood and keep you warm in the winter. Look at that, sun peeking into that glorious, majestic mane. Chin mane. Oh, it's getting a little dark, it's getting a little bit blue. That means he's out there all day working in the fields like a man does. There's stoking the flame. Smells probably like cedar wood and smoke, and always drinking some coffee. Of course he's got to drink some coffee. Man don't sleep. He is a legend. So that's most of the ad right there. It keeps on going a little bit longer than that, but those are the clips that I want to talk about today. We're going to go over today basically what you need to do to shoot in a field to get that natural lighting look, and maybe a good way to go about it, or maybe just some ideas to think of if you want to kind of take this base and build it in your own way on your own shoots, which you should always do. Everything is just reference. What you do is you take that reference and then you fine tune it and adjust it for it to become your own thing. So as I flash the clips before you, you could take a look and see the video is very natural looking. It's almost flat, and that's kind of by design. A lot of lighting tutorials that tell you to use natural lighting in a field tell you if you don't have a light fixture that's strong enough to combat the sun, or a bounce board or something like that, then rely on negative fill. Because negative fill could be relatively cheap depending on where you are. Duvetine can be a little bit pricey, but nothing's stopping you from going out and getting just blackout materials that you can throw on a stand. Cinematographers like to create shape. And when you're in the middle of the field and everything's bouncing every which way, you're kind of limited on what you could do. So you can't add more light. The solution usually is to take away light. And you can do that in an extreme dramatic way, like the photos I'm showing you right now. And those are a lot more stylized. And don't get me wrong, they're gorgeous. These are beautifully done. And this is definitely a look I could have gone for, but multiple variables kind of played into effect as to why the image didn't turn out this way. The big one being, I had this image in my mind, like Hateful Eight, Quentin Tarantino, before the storm starts, the very beginning of the movie. Everything's super natural and flat. And I thought there was just a kind of a better way to show how cold and crispy it is, because snow really is that. When you're in the field in the dead of winter, everything is bright, everything is crispy, it's cold, and it's not, there's no shadows anywhere. To me, that's natural. If I wanted to add a bit more negative fill, I could have. Let me show up an image of you right now of what negative fill I did throw up. Now, as you can see, it's clamped to the Jeep right off camera right now because we put them on some stands. And as you all know, if you're going to use a big enough blackout material on stands in the middle of a farm field, it's a cornfield, there's going to be gusts of wind. We're in the green belt, so it's going to be blowing everything, catching like a sail. You know what? I'm just going to roll up the Jeep right off camera, and we're going to do that. Now, when you look at the negative fill that's on Tyler's face, it's very, very subtle. It's almost not even noticeable to the naked, untrained eye. And at times, it's not noticeable at all because there's a lot of motion in these shots, and I didn't have a lot of negative fill to work with. But there are moments where you can see it, and I'm going to throw a false color LUT on right now so you can see that there is an exposure difference. It's very subtle, but it's there. It's minute, but it's there. And the most important thing I wanted to do here was give the best of both worlds. There is a bit of a control going on here, but I also didn't want to call too much attention to it. I've also established in the video, like you saw, that he's walking up in the middle of this field. There's nothing there that's going to cast a shadow on him. It would seem random all of a sudden for a shadow to be casted. Another thing I wanted to talk about, I've got false color LUT up again. And this false color LUT, keep in mind, is a little bit different than the false color that's actually in my camera, but it'll give you a rough idea. I'm going to slide the exposure knob on my editing app so you can see what happens when you record your camera and you expose the settings for your snow to be closer to middle gray, which is going to be your instinct, because background is usually a little bit less exposed than your subject. And when you're shooting in log, you usually want your subject to be middle gray, 1 stop, 2 stops max over middle gray. Usually 1 stop over middle gray is the sweet spot for your subject, depending on their skin tone. And the background has to be less than that. Now with the snow, you're not supposed to do that. Technically, you should be boosting it up a bit. Your snow should be almost 2 stops over middle gray, 1 to 2 stops roughly in there. And then you get worried because to say maybe your subject's going to be blown out now. Well, the good news about that is because the snow acts like a giant bounce and we're shooting primarily on an overcast day, kind of evens out on the actor. So whatever they're exposed to, the snow will kind of be exposed around the same. So that's why I say shoot your snow around 1 stop over middle gray, depending on the skin tones of your actor. Tyler is a little bit more fair skinned, so I could have pushed it to the very, very tippy top of that and made it mark like 2 stops over middle gray. Didn't want to push it too much. And then when you drag it into your editing program and you see the IRE, it's going to be like the snow will be pushing 90 IRE. And the way you want to do it is your snow should not go over 85 to 95 IRE, depending on how bright you want it. Because your camera looks at everything as a gray card, right? And snow, if it's underexposed, if I put the image right next to it, you could see something crazy happens. The properly exposed versus the middle gray exposed, snow doesn't look white anymore, does it? It's starting to look gray. We do not want that. So remember, when you're shooting snow, very important thing to do is to expose it a little bit brighter than you usually would expose your background to be, because you're going to get that nice crisp snowy look. Make sure you're not clipping it, so always use assistance, false color, anything that you have to just make sure that you've dialed in your settings. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell for future videos. You know, when that happens, they come out, you get a notification. It's like a newsletter, except instead of opening up and seeing something depressing in the news, it's another thumbnail of this clown going, let's go through another lighting breakdown that you've already seen before somewhere else online, because let's be honest, shit's oversaturated on YouTube nowadays.